Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Home Alone for the Game Boy, brought to us by THQ. Based on the film of the same name, Home Alone actually takes a different approach from the NES version of the game. In the NES one, your goal was to set traps and escape the wet bandits for 20 minutes before eventually being able to complete the game when the cops show up. However, in the Game Boy version, your goal is to actually run around the house and collect a certain amount of objects and store them in the house's vault in the basement before you're able to get a key to go to the basement and defeat the boss. While you're in the same house for the entire game, the layout of the house changes because you're in different wings of the house, but you always start in Kevin's bedroom, and the item you collect also changes per level. The Game Boy version of the game is actually more based on the SNES version of the game. There was also a Home Alone game released for the Sega Master System as well as the Sega Genesis, but both of those games are different as well. When we start the game, we get a cutscene between Harry and Marv, the wet bandits themselves. Once the cutscene is over, we take control of Kevin. We start off in Kevin's bedroom, and our goal for the first level is to collect 24 items that represent money, whether it be jewelry, watches, or just plain money bags. Either way, your goal is to collect 24 of them and return them to the basement's vault, in order to make sure that the wet bandits don't get a hold of those items. You have a few different ways of stopping other enemies in the game, whether it's to use your water pistol in order to do a little bit of damage to them that they end up sticking their head down for just a few seconds, allowing you to jump over them and get past them, though you can fully take out an enemy by either having an invincibility item that we won't see till later in the game, or dropping objects on the enemy such as the bowling ball that I was using earlier. There is no order that you must collect the items or visit rooms in the game, and the game does a decent enough job of giving you plenty of rooms to explore, so you don't have to find every single item. And that's going to be our goal in the game, to collect just the amount of items that we need in order to complete each stage. There's also a variety of other things you can get, including slices of pizza, which if you get a full pizza, which you can see represented in the upper left corner, you end up getting some extra health. Or you can actually find full pizzas, which of course will give you health instantly. There are 1-ups as well, which are represented by pizza boxes. You can see your life count at the bottom of the screen, as well as your total health that you have left in the lower right, and your score in the lower left. Overall, the controls work rather well, of having one button to use items, as well as to open and close objects, as well as the other button to be jump. In order to change weapons, you're going to press the select button when you have other weapons to choose from. The weapons in the game don't defeat enemies, instead they just do increased damage to make them look at the ground quicker. You start off with the basic thief enemy that, as you can see, wears the black coat as well as the black hat, and it takes only a few hits to make him look at the ground, and he looks at the ground for a decent amount of time. You'll have more increased enemies like these guys, the thugs. These guys definitely take even more hits and stare at the ground less time when you finally get them to look at the ground. For the most part with the enemies, I tried to use the objects around me, such as the bowling balls, to try to do a complete knockout of the enemy altogether so I don't have to deal with him. Sometimes just running through an enemy and sacrificing one of your health is the best strategy to get past some of the areas in the game, especially when you have consistent amounts of enemies. There's a good amount of health items in the game to help you out, as well as some extra lives. The most annoying thing though about the game is the fact you can only hold a certain amount of objects in your possession before you end up having to dump them off in the vault. This increases by 1 for each subsequent level. For example, in the first level here, we can only hold 6 objects in our bag before we have to dump that off. And then in the next level, we'll be able to hold 7, then 8, and finally 9. And of course, the amount of items that we have to collect per level also increases. The good thing is, like I said, there's plenty of hiding spots for all these items, and there's lots of rooms in the house. Once you've finally gotten all the items in the first level, go back to the basement door that we passed a little bit ago. When you're going through the level, make sure that you realize where this basement door is so you can come back to it once you have delivered all the items. You'll find a key next to it, in which case you can open up the basement door and head down. You'll then run through several screens, and it kind of reminds me of Pitfall in a sense when going through these screens with various obstacles, and for example the first level has spiders to deal with. The weirdest spiders are the ones that when you jump, it actually causes them to go up and down, and you'll have to time your jumps correctly so you can get past them. It's then time for the boss. For the first bosses of the game, you're going to be dropping bricks on whatever enemy it happens to be. The first boss ends up being the spider, which moves quicker when you end up landing a hit on it, and moves back and forth left and right, but it won't go all the way over to the right. You just have to go over to the left and jump up and hit the brick to fall on it, while it's of course not where you are. Once you defeat the boss, go over to the left, put all the stuff into the vault, and you'll move on to level number 2. At the beginning of the next level, you're told that you're in another wing of the house, yet you start off in Kevin's bedroom again. It's amazing just how large this house actually is. In this level, you are collecting toys. You must collect 32 total toys in order to actually enter the basement in the bottom. We started off by exiting the bedroom after collecting items there, going left, grabbing the item away from the big muscle guy, and then heading out and starting over to the right. Be careful of objects that are just laying on the ground that can cause you a little bit of damage, and grab any and every toy that you see. We can now hold 7 toys total, so that helps us out on our journey of collecting 32 of them. There ends up being not a whole ton of strategy as far as finding the items. You pretty much want to explore every room that you end up coming across. And while running through the room, you pretty much want to mash the button to check every single item that you end up running in front of or jumping on. Sometimes there are some really well hidden items, such as some health or an extra life located actually in the ceiling, or in paintings and objects placed on the wall that are really hard to reach. Anytime I end up running by one of the vents, as long as I have at least one item in my inventory, I end up dropping it into the vault, and try to keep my bag as empty as possible while traveling through, so I always have at least a little bit of room to pick up some extra items. Sometimes you're going to end up needing to use the beds or another piece of furniture to bounce up and down on it in order to jump over an enemy, avoid an enemy's fire, or get over a giant line of spikes or other objects laying on the ground. While the enemies in the game definitely get harder with each level, with some of the other ones taking so many hits with the water gun, it's almost impossible to actually get them to face the ground before they end up running into you. One of the more annoying things about the enemies in the game also is that they do follow you through multiple screens, so you'll have to be careful, especially in long hallways, and the faster enemies will end up chasing you down. Early on in the second level, the baseball item is definitely one of the best weapons that you'll be able to use. These will pretty much knock down an enemy, get them to face the ground for a good amount of time so that you can end up getting past them. At any point when you get your bag filled up to 6 or 7 items, be sure to run back and return the items to the vault before then proceeding down the hallway farther. So once you have those basics down of checking pretty much every object and how the weapons pretty much work for getting enemies to look at the ground so that you can jump over them, you have all the mechanics that you need in order to complete the game. Thankfully, like I said, there are a generous amount of items for you to pick up to replenish some of the health you may lose throughout. And once we're able to get past pretty much the second level, the final 2 levels of the game get a little bit boring since you're pretty much doing the same thing you've been doing for every level. Now we're going to go past the basement door, remembering where it's located so we can get back to it in just a little bit, and we're going to head upstairs to collect the last 10 items that we need to find. I find it interesting that not only were there so many different versions of Home Alone released for pretty much every home console at the time, and yes, they were all published by THQ, but they were developed by different companies, with Bethesda working on the NES one, Sega on the Genesis and Master System and Game Gear versions, Imagineering, which worked on this version, as well as the Super Nintendo version, and there's also a PC version of the game as well. One of the most annoying things I didn't mention in the game is that the thieves that are around the house can actually steal your items and take them away from you. We only have a few more items that we need to collect. Use the baseball on this big muscle guy so I can get past them, and enter this room. Watch out for the guy who ends up throwing his hat at you from the left side of the room. You'll have to do a big leap here, but if you do it timed correctly, you can just barely grab the helicopter that's flying above. There's a toy robot to the right of that, and then you can head back to the door that you entered from. Sometimes a big muscle guy will be back in your path, so watch out for him. We only need one more object, so keep running over to the left a couple of screens, and you'll see a toy soldier laying on the ground that we're going to end up picking up. Use our last baseball so we can get past this guy one more time, and then I'm going to switch over to the slingshot to try to help me deliver a few key hits to this guy before I'm able to run and jump past him. Do the same thing if you end up running into another one of the big muscle guys, delivering about 10 or so of the hits with the slingshot to finally knock him down. Here I'm going to just drop all the items that I have collected. Now we have 0 left that we need, and now I'll head back over to the right and go down to the first floor once again, and thankfully that key has now appeared near the basement door. I love how every single time he enters it, he ends up screaming "oh no" as if he locked himself. Like somehow he was able to unlock the door, go inside, and then the padlock was able to lock again when he closed it. Either way, down in the basement you're going to be running past a whole lot of rats that are going to fall from the ceiling and get in your way. For the most part, you can pretty much just run past them, and when you get to the end, it's time to fight a giant rat. The difference between the giant rat and the spider boss from the first level is that the giant rat can actually jump at you. His pattern is a little bit harder to judge when dropping those giant bricks on top of him, but overall it's still a very easy battle. Even if you only have one hit going into the fight like I do, it's still pretty easy to deliver those hits that you need in order to defeat the boss and move on to that next level. The third level of the game has you collecting electronics, so you'll have televisions or stereos that you're going to need to find throughout the house, and you need to find 42 of them. At least it's the answer to all questions in the universe, but it's still pretty annoying that we have to collect that many of them. You'll notice that you have a bunch of these coat racks, or light racks, or whatever they are in the background, and you can actually jump on top of the different hooks on there in order to get up to higher platforms, and you're going to have to do this at certain points in order to reach certain ledges, or sometimes jump over enemies that may get in your way. And even though we are in a different part of the house and collecting some different types of objects, the core gameplay is the exact same as it was in the other levels. The enemies definitely are tougher, with the more tougher enemies littering the different floors and rooms that we're going to be exploring here. There's also some more hazards on the ground, for example having to jump on an electrical socket in the background to help us propel ourselves over a spike pit. You also gotta love when you exit a room in this game and an enemy is already waiting for you right outside and you're unable to actually escape, taking some damage. One of the worst enemies to deal with in this level is the evil electricians. The one I just took out with an iron a few seconds ago, and now another one just a few screens away is coming towards me. Inside here I'm able to find a couple of pizza slices to grant myself another one-up by filling up the pizza in the upper left corner. and collect a few more objects. Thankfully though, there are actually no enemies located in this room, so it's another really easy and good room to stop by, because you'll get some health and extra life possibly, and a bunch of little objects to pick up to increase. Now before continuing down the hallway, since I do have 4 items, and I can get past the enemy that was going to be chasing me without even having to waste any ammo on him, I'll run back and drop off some more items. Since there are more items to find, they add more rooms to the levels for levels 2, 3, and 4. What you end up having is basically a new area that you weren't able to explore in an earlier level, adding the attic type area in level 3 and the right side of the hallway in level number 4. Stopping by in the bathroom, you can pick up a bunch of items, including our first invincibility. Basically, you pick up the aftershave, and you're able to then be invincible for a period of time, going kind of into a berserk rage, and you're able to run through any enemy that gets in your way. I recommend pretty much just running straight down this hallway once you get that. You'll pick up a whole bunch of items that are scattered throughout the hallway, and once you've dropped the items off into the vent, you can just continue going to the left. If you need to come back at any point and get the items to the right of the vent, you can do so once you've already explored the left side. Here I'm going to go back over to the right and drop off a couple more of the items, and then proceed back over to the left. Since there's actually a decent amount of items scattered along the actual hallway itself, you'll find a ton of items just scattered amongst the floor, and then once you've gotten all of them, you can go back and head into any room that you've already bypassed. You can also go into the attic if you like at any point by jumping on the tables in order to get up there. Before doing that though, we're going to head back over and enter this room and grab the TV sitting right on this table. We're going to go back to the vent, drop off the TV we just grabbed, and head to the right side of the hallway. This isn't the most efficient path by far, I'm sure, in order to collect all the items that you need in the level. But that's the good thing about the game, and what makes it at least fun for those who want to give it a try, is that there isn't a set pattern that you have to follow in order to find all the objects. So that lets you explore at your own leisure, enter the rooms that you want to enter, and don't enter ones that you don't, and you should still be able to find a decent amount of items. Thankfully, we only need 2 more items at this point in order to finish off the level. Unfortunately, there really isn't any more located on this floor, so we're going to have to go back over to the left and actually go up to the attic itself. The attic in level number 3 is pretty bland, with just some items scattered around and no real threats, whereas in level 4 when we explore it, you'll find bats scattered throughout that can be a little bit annoying. You unfortunately do have to use all the things in the background in order to actually get up to the top floor by using the tables and everything in order to reach that ladder. Like I said, the area is pretty bland up here, but there are some items including weapons and health, and the last couple of items that we're going to need to collect to finish. The good thing also is there is a vent up here that you can use to drop the items you have, so in case your bag is full but you still have other items to grab while you're up in the attic, you can do that. Here we're going to drop off that last item, and there are 2 ladders that lead to the attic, so we can now head to the right. We don't have to go back to the left and go down where we came, so we'll be a little bit closer to getting to the basement. The basement this time around doesn't have bats or any type of enemy like that. No, it's actually ghosts flying through. Little tiny ghosts. And the only way I can really tell is that the final enemy to this area is also a larger ghost. The most annoying part is probably here, where you have to face the opposite direction in order to get the ghosts to move in a way that you can actually get past them. It's a little bit difficult, especially the final screen here of the ghost, in order to avoid taking damage. Now, as for the ghost itself, the ghost kind of moves in a diagonal pattern. Whatever way you end up being on the screen, you're on the left side or the right side, you'll have to watch out for it, jumping over it or letting it go over your head. It'll try to chase you down, but since it's constantly rising up, it's pretty easy to dodge. In fact, it's probably easier than the rat boss from level 2. After throwing all the objects into the vault, we move on to the 4th and final level of Home Alone. The final level, we have to collect 70 objects. Yep, we have to collect almost 30 more objects than we did in the previous level. And because of this, we have to explore pretty much every area of the house. It's also very strange that we're collecting pets this time around. Yep, whether it be lizards, or frogs, or cats, dogs, they're all scattered throughout the house, and you actually pick them up and throw them down into the basement, just like you do with all the other objects that we've been collecting throughout the levels. For the most part, the animals are pretty easy to grab. The frogs can get a little bit annoying because they will, of course, hop around, but usually they'll end up hopping directly into your path. Yep, you can see that in the bottom of the basement is just a pile of bodies. Yep, just drop all the animals and they just love to lay in a big old pile at the basement stairs. Which is kind of an ominous, weird thing. Do they all end up dying when you drop them such a long distance through the house into the basement? Pretty cruel overall. Either way, our goal is to collect 70 of them, and thankfully there are plenty of areas to explore. Added to this time around though, there is a right wing of the house. Basically, instead of going up the staircase, you can actually keep going past it and go to another whole area. Our path for this will be exploring the area we started off on the first floor, heading to the second floor, doing everything up there including the attic, and then going to that right side next to the staircase in order to collect the last few items that we're going to need. And since we are collecting 70 items, this level is obviously the longest and the toughest level to get through. There's also a lot of electricians covering the hallways, so you'll have to be careful. There is an invincibility that we will be grabbing in a little bit to help us take out at least a few of these enemies. The electrician guys are everywhere in this level. They move really quickly, they take several hits to knock out, even with like the baseball or some of the best weapons in the game. So, some of the best strategy if you don't have the ability to instantly knock them out with something laying around, or the invincibility, just kinda get past them and run to the opposite end of the hallway. Get as far away from them as you can, then possibly enter a room. This way you may hope that they reset before you end up exiting the room. Also, making it to the staircase, when they reach that end, they will start backtracking back to wherever they started. Unfortunately, even though we've been in the level for a bit, we're still far away from being able to complete the level. On the second floor, I'm going to run through, collect as much stuff as I can, go to the attic, run through that, and then come back to the second floor and gather anything I may have missed my first time through. Sometimes you may have to use a table or something in order to get higher up, so that you can grab the birds that are going to be flying back and forth. Stopping by in the bathroom, as soon as you enter, run all the way over to the left and try to get around this guy. Unfortunately, it can be rather difficult to do so. You can use the toilet to actually propel yourself up in the air, and if you time it right, you'll be able to use the bucket to take out the guy. Inside here, just bounce on the bed a little bit, and you'll be able to get just high enough in order to grab the bird. This is one of the more annoying screens here, because you'll have two screens back to back with spikes, as well as you're going to have lizards crawling on the wall. You'll have to wait a good amount of time for the lizard to get high enough so you can grab it before you end up continuing through, while the entire time the big guy is stomping on the ground. While I ended up grabbing one lizard, I left one for now. I'll be coming back and getting it later. We're now going to head up into the attic. I mentioned in level 3 that the attic in 4 has bats, and yep, you can see them all lining along the ceiling. Some of the bats will move up and down. You're just gonna, of course, run around them, jump over them, wait for them to go up so you can get past, and collect all the animals along the way. Thankfully, just like in level 3, there is a vent set up so you can drop off any animals you find up in the attic, and make sure that you get them all before you end up heading back down. There's also a few other things like a slingshot located here, but since the slingshot is relatively weak compared to the other weapons, it isn't a whole lot of use to us all the way in level 4. Watching out for one more bat, when we jump down off the ladder, going out of the attic itself, we see that we're able to get a 1-up to appear. After looking around for a few other animals to see if there's been any of them I may have missed, which unfortunately is my biggest mistake during the course of the run, is realizing that I had pretty much already gotten all the animals along this floor. Of course, the one that I am missing, though, is the lizard located here. So I'm going to just take the hit of damage, grab the lizard, and then quickly run away so that I don't end up getting hit for that final hit of my health, and then climb up and jump over all the spikes. Instead of trying to go back over to the right and having to deal with the spikes and the big guy and possibly getting that extra bit of health taken away from me, I go over to the left and climb up into the attic once again and go through this in order to get back to the other side. I also left a giant pizza that I can grab to refill one of the health that I have lost throughout the course of the level. Now that we've collected pretty much everything possible on the second floor, we're now going to go back and go down to the first floor. When you make it back down to the first floor, watch out for the electrician, who's probably going to start chasing you immediately. Enter the first room, you can get some health on the left side. You don't have to really go over to the right side and deal with that at all. Then just start making your way through this area, collecting a decent amount of animals and entering the rooms that you do pass. Thankfully, we're able to get another one of the airsoft rifle guns located in this room, as they are the most powerful weapon in the game, and we're actually going to be using it to take out one of the final bosses. Some of the more annoying jumps is you'll have to manipulate a little bit of holding down the button to get a drawer to come out, so you can then jump on the drawer in order to actually get certain items that are above you on dressers. To the right, though, you'll find another staircase which leads to another floor. Starting off here, we're going to enter this bathroom, and there's a few objects that we can find scattered around, including another one of those invincibilities. And you want to use this invincibility to your advantage and take out as many more of those guys as you can before it ends up running out, stopping only to maybe drop off the animals if you need to in the vent before continuing on. Here I keep running all the way until I get past a large set of spikes. Grab the animals I've already seen and then enter the room over here, using the chair to kind of bounce myself up and collect a whole bunch of cats that are sitting around. Here you're going to find the kitchen area, and there's a bunch of animals for you to collect in here. Be careful of this guy here, he will fire a bullet at you, so jump over it. We grab another animal, and we have a filled up animal sack, so we're going to have to head back over to the right. Use the animal scratching posts and stuff in order to get over those spikes. Use whatever baseballs you have left until you run out. If you need to use some of the airsoft gun, you can, but you want to try to conserve some of the ammo for it. After dropping off the animals, we now only need 6 more in order to complete the final level. We're going to stop by this room first, one that we hadn't already explored, watching out for the guy who's throwing baseballs on the right side, and grab the bird that is flying overhead. On the left side, there's another bird just kind of flying, but thankfully this one doesn't have an enemy nearby for us to be taken out by. The final part of this room has another one of the guys throwing baseballs, so you're going to want to bounce on this in order to get high enough to grab the bird and avoid getting hit. With only 2 more animals left, I'm going to stop first and drop the ones I do have, and then we're going to go back to the left. Unfortunately, no more animals kind of scattered here, so I am going to have to deal with this guy. I'm going to use the airsoft rifle in order to hit him so that I can just quickly get past. Here is where we had previously taken out that guy who was firing at us, and we're going to enter the door right past that. We can grab a lizard on the wall and a frog right on the next screen. Now we just have to go back to the vent, drop off the last animals, and go to the basement door, which thankfully is also on the same floor that we currently are. Now the basement for this time actually has multiple bosses for us to face off with. Instead of just dealing with normal enemies, or even ghosts, we have killer grates in the walls that you're going to have to jump over in between, and duck underneath ones that are going to try to fly at you as well. Here you're going to want to wait for 3 of them to rise before getting past, and then it's time to battle the wet bandits themselves. For the first fight, you're going to want to jump up in the air and shoot directly at the face of him. Every time you end up delivering an actual hit to him, you'll see that he'll bounce a little bit on the ground. If he just keeps standing still when you hit him, it means you haven't done any damage to him. After just a few hits, he will drop and you'll continue on. It's time for the second boss. This boss ends up working a little bit differently. Instead of shooting him, what you're going to want to do is get near the opened window that you can see is highlighted, and when you jump at it, the guy with the shovel appears in order to hit him in the head. You'll have a few seconds each time he ends up appearing, so you don't have to be directly underneath of it already when he ends up bringing out that shovel. It only takes a handful of hits, and you've taken out both members of the Wet Bandits, but the game isn't over yet. You're going to throw all the items into the vault, but you have one more boss to deal with before the game is done. Yep, the giant evil furnace. The thing that Kevin is so afraid of in the film is actually the final boss of the game, and it spits fire at you. Thankfully, you do have an unlimited water gun to use in order to actually do damage to it. Just keep firing at it while the grate is up, jumping over the fire or ducking underneath of it sometimes, and keep delivering hits. Since the boss itself doesn't, of course, move and just keeps firing very slow-moving projectiles, just be sure to run back to the chair if you need it in order to jump over them. It'll only take a handful of hits to defeat the boss, and you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Home Alone on the Nintendo Game Boy. So there you have it, a picture of Kevin and his mom, as well as the wet bandits behind jail, which is the same portrait pictures they've been using for the whole game. Well, I mentioned earlier that the NES game has a little bit more to do with the film itself. I have to give that version, even though it's considered bad, a little bit of an edge over this one. This game may control a little bit better, but overall it's a much more bland experience. But with that, it's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.